Hi, I'm Andy,
And I'm Emmy.
and this is
My Little Menty Bee. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are solely those of the hosts and are not representative of any of their affiliates. Listener discretion is advised. This podcast episode includes references to fat-phobic language, body dysmorphia, eating disorders, child abuse, and rape. Enjoy this episode of My Little Menty Bee.
Okay, so here we are.
Remember that one time we went to fat camp?
Which time? So, a little bit of background is we went to fat camp. I went 3 years in a row.
And trauma, I don't remember how many. I think you went
2.
Camp Shane once, and then I went to Pocono Trails once.
So, today we are going to be talking a little bit about our time at fat camp. And I came with my own set of information, which is from a Bloomberg article that was written about kind of like, I know you guys are watching Succession right now.
Yeah.
And they described the scandal that surrounded Camp Shane as very Succession-like. So I'm going to break down from the beginning when Camp Shane started. But I just want to preface this by saying Camp Shane is actually the camp that the movie Heavyweights was based off of. So
Yay.
You watched Heavyweights.
We watched Heavyweights last night. It was Cody's first time, which I thought was fun. And I took notes because I think that there are portions of it that feel like our experience, but then there are portions of it that feel like what we hoped the experience would look like.
Yeah.
And then there was obviously the very Disney-esque, like, everything was cool. Like, it similar but different.
I mean,
sure.
I watched it not that long ago, but I'm going to let you refresh my memory. But I definitely know that they staged a coup that we wished we could.
Bruh, and we talked about it a lot.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, I figured that I would get started with this article that I read. So it was a Bloomberg article. It was 35 pages long, and it was in depth.
Okay.
So we're going to take it back to the beginning.
Let's see what we can remember.
Okay. So there are two main people that I'm going to talk about, Selma Ettenberg.
Okay.
And then David Ettenberg.
I remember that guy.
Okay. David Ettenberg, played by Ben Stiller.
And like very accurate, in my opinion.
Well, in
although
the article,
exterior, he looked very different.
Actually, he looked a lot more like the owner of Camp Pocono Trails, I feel like. But
yeah,
they mentioned, and I don't really remember this because I don't know if I ever saw David, but he wore a jester's hat around the camp, like one of those ones with the bells,
right?
Like a ding-a-ling-a-ling.
Shut up! I remember.
Do you remember that?
that?
I don't remember that.
I remember vaguely being in the dining hall and having him come in once wearing that, and we were all just like, it felt very like Matilda when the principal would come around like with the whip. Like we were just like, what is happening?
So David, if you can recall, was a very like thin man.
Yes.
So I learned in this article that he was never fat, which is really upsetting. But his mother, okay, so Selma, she was born in 1923, so she's old. Obviously, she's dead, but like those the vibes that she brought were very old school to the camp. And so she was born in 1923, and she had middle child syndrome, like super duper. She was the middle of 3, and they noted that she really felt like she didn't get a chance to like shine. So in the mid-1960s, she was the director of a girls-only weight loss camp in upstate New York.
Why do I remember, like, them... Didn't they do, like, when we got there, didn't they tell us, like, a story about, like, kind of the birth of Camp Shane? But I vaguely remember this. Okay, continue.
Okay, so
You're jogging my memory.
Yeah, she was the camp director of this girls-only camp. And, okay, I wrote down what they were eating. They ate raw veggies, veal was their diet, veal and raw veggies, and then like they just said chew slowly and no eating after 5. So it was like very restrictive.
Yeah.
Selma herself got into this because she had gotten to be about 200 pounds by the age of 15. So it makes sense that she entered into this world. Apparently she lost it through like sheer of will.
Okay, so how many pounds by the time she was what?
200 pounds by the time she was 15.
And I don't know a lot, so like I don't know
is that, like, that's not normal?
They didn't state how high she was, how tall
Okay.
she is, but it does sound like it was like an uncomfortable weight for her. So
Got
at
it.
least she had some sort of like, connection to the message, because when I found out that like the inherited owner was like always a skinny dude, I was like, fuck that shit.
But you
I
wonder,
should-
right, if that's his family, you wonder if there's like some like inherited
Sure.
eating disorder.
Well, okay, as we go through it, we're going to find out that like Selma, she was just never quite right. Okay. So she's at this camp and she hears the girls talking about boys, and she decides that she wants to make a co-ed camp because she wanted them to hook up.
No, but like, so but that was the reason.
Well, it was
For-
like a main reason. She decided that it was going to be like
social stuff or like.
kind of like her thing to make a name for herself. Was she was like, I'm going to do this co-ed camp. I'm going to have my own. I'm going to bring out this new idea. But mainly, like, the inspiration was so that these girls and boys that felt kind of like rejected by society would have a place to get together, which I think is kind of wholesome, but also a little messed up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, I have thoughts.
Well,
but
go
I
ahead. Tell me your thoughts.
I don't know. So I watched parts of the MTV Camp Pocono Trails thing.
Which is the second camp that we went
Which
to.
the second camp, yes. And it felt so the show was based around the counselors and their kind of like relationships, and like I digress, but that kind of gives me like very like Tony Sparber as well. So they're very similar in that way, these people.
And I don't know about you, but I did not have any romantic relationships at Camp Shane.
I did.
Or at okay, whatever. Camp Pocono Trails? No.
No, I have one kiss that I can remember, but I digress. But no, should I?
Yeah, share. Spill the tea.
Well, what was it? I think it was no. I think it was Pocono Trails, but there was a kid who went to Pocono Trails, and there was a movie back in the early 2000s called Shallow Hal.
Yes.
And
Okay.
young Hal was at our camp,
Oh,
and we kissed by the dining hall. But then he told everybody it didn't fucking happen.
boyfriends.
Yeah, I had no friends, only boyfriends.
Yeah, you really did make a lot of enemies.
Yeah, lots
Okay.
of enemies.
So she opens up this camp so that it can be co-ed. And you know how they got the name Shane?
No.
Okay, the running joke was that Shane sounds like shame.
Yeah.
And it actually is Yiddish for beautiful.
I did not feel beautiful at that fucking camp.
No. So, the Selma and her husband bought this like bungalow colony in upstate New York, and her mom saw the camp and was like, "Oh my God, Shane."
Beautiful.
Yeah, and Yiddish, and that's how we ended up with Camp Shane. So she buys this camp, and it actually sounds really lovely. And I have from the article read that first highlighted paragraph.
In the early years, wow. I like it there.
Try again.
Pew. In the early years.
Okay, don't
I'm
do
just,
that.
I'm like
Would
trying
you
to.
like me to read it?
No.
Okay.
In the early years, Selma charged parents roughly $1,000 for 7 weeks. Her diet program was straightforward: 1,400 calories a day, lots of exercise, and a 12-foot fence to keep kids from sneaking off the property in search for food. Dude, I remember being so hungry.
Just keep going.
There was swimming, archery, soccer, and for the delinquent, 3-mile morning hikes that Selma led herself. The dining hall sat at the bottom of a steep hill. Ah!
The hill.
My body just tensed up. That hill. Former campers recall moaning as they climbed it after meals. Details of camp life across the decades are based on interviews with more than 60 former campers, counselors, and parents, and have been confirmed by multiple sources except where otherwise indicated. Yo, that hill.
If you can see behind my dead eyes. Well, actually, it's on my body. My Camp Shane shirt. We did, in fact, go to Camp Shane.
We did. With Princess Diana.
That was on one of our outings. She didn't join us.
A
So
Camp Shane t-shirt.
tell me what you remember about the hill.
Okay. I remember it's the only building at the bottom of that hill. And the significance of the bottom of the hill is because that's where the food is.
Mm-hmm.
So and it's just so, it's because, and I don't know, I wish we could go back and really look at and I'm sure you have, how steep it is and everything.
Mm.
But for little chunky legs, that fucking thing was like no joke, brother, especially for people who have been sedentary for most of our lives. So at the bottom of the hill, there was the food, and it felt like it was like a mile, maybe 2 miles long, but I know it wasn't that
Incorrect.
long. But it just felt
But yeah,
long.
sure.
But you know what? You look up and I just remember that there were some people who would skip meals because the walk would just be too much.
And I think that when we arrived, that was like the dining hall was the first thing that we saw.
The first thing, and that's the first thing you see that you have, the first hurdle you have to jump.
Yeah, is getting
While
up.
you have to go with your shit, with all your shit.
Remember that?
Yeah, with
Oh,
your
I was
bags.
whispering. But do you remember the golf carts?
That only counselors got to use. And yeah, it was same at Pocono too, both. All the adults had golf carts, and then they would stop and they would antagonize you, and then they would beep beep take off.
So the hill was like a key component in designing this camp.
Yep.
But they did have like seemingly a lot of fun things. And I know that you just watched Heavyweights.
Yes.
And you and I have a very distinct memory of being shown the promotional video for Camp Shane.
Yeah, like a sleazy salesperson came over and sat us down on the couch with Mom, and they put it in the VHS player, and it looked like the promotional tape from Heavyweights, which is, it looked like almost exactly. It was
Shot
just
for
this
shot.
like
You can look it up
sweet,
on YouTube.
yeah, and the sweet old, and I looked it up as well. These sweet old people, they're just like, we live on the property, and we're here all the time, and you're like family to us while you're at Shane. And it was like, you know, it's like they had the water blob thing and the water activities, and you know, you could really be sold that you were gonna have a fun time, especially as a bigger kid. Like, I feel like the idea that you can fit in and maybe not be bullied. Wouldn't that be a nice thought?
Yeah, well, the reality of it was there was no lake.
Nope.
We didn't even get
I
shuttled
don't
to a
remember
lake.
a lake. I don't remember a lake.
There was no lake. And so, but in the video, which
There's a
you
lake.
can see on YouTube, they go to a lake. And then in later years, they said that they took trips to the lake. But no lake was there.
Nope.
Just a pool that was enclosed by a fence so that kids didn't kill themselves.
Yeah. Which,
So,
it just felt like, it felt very prison-y. Every part of that camp felt prison, like prison.
yeah.
Wow.
And so we came, like I said, the camp started in 1968, and I don't know when we got there. But yeah, you can see here on this letter that I wrote to Mom in 2002. So we were there in 2002. The camp started in 1968, and so when it started, it was, you know, a beautiful campus. And they spent about $50,000 on this campus.
Jeez.
Yeah, and it ended up
In the 60s? Okay.
it ended up selling for like 16 million, I think. I can double check that, but
Recently? The property? God dang. Talk about an ROI.
and so when she opened it, we had kind of all these really beautiful selling points of the archery and the swimming, and you know, it was very communal, and it was co-ed, and it was a place for these like, you know,
It almost made you excited.
Yeah, 100%.
Almost. But there was this like feeling, and I also didn't like camp in general, but I feel like we both were not great in camp.
Yeah, we also just had chaotic home lives, and I think that that's one of the key pieces that was missing from this article was they touched on it, and it was, you know, more specific to the folks that were attending in later years, because when this first started, they referenced that in the 1960s, only 5% of American children were considered obese by
Gotcha.
the American Medical Association. So it wasn't like when we arrived, which they later reference in the article as being the time where diet culture was really booming, and we were in the midst of what was considered like the obesity epidemic, and President Bush was putting in all of these measures for like the presidential physical fitness test. And so there's a lot of processed foods that were being pushed, and like artificial
Light,
sugars.
no fat.
Yeah, no fat. We did Taibo, and like Jane Fonda videos were really popular in this time that we attended. So kind of the vision of
circuit training, little places that you go to, that kind of thing.
Yeah, the vision of Camp Shane was still discriminatory in my opinion, and still fucked up.
But it was beyond. It was beyond.
But it definitely morphed into something really gross. So Selma, who started it, had these kids. Now, she had middle child syndrome, but she was really insistent on making sure that all of her children were treated the same. So much so that created kind of resentment from them. And David, the son, the one with the jester's hat, ended up inheriting the camp. And he fought his mother tooth and nail for this camp because he just felt like his mom didn't care about him. He just became obsessed with doing better at what expense? Not, I mean, like at ours,
At ours, yeah.
So he's just working in the office in the early 1970s. This is when we start to see those classic ads when they were putting out in the paper, and I have a quote that I want you to read. So this is when we start to see those classic ads of, the child wearing the pants that they came to camp in. And, you can see very visibly that there's like a difference. This is from a New York Daily News headline. I want you to read that bottom
Right here.
quote. Yes.
Okay. So, Selma, her objective is to make a human being of a child who enters camp looking like a glob. Wow. Okay.
So this is the beginning.
My mother, who couldn't cook a decent meal, made a fortune from not feeding children. Yee.
When the camp was just first starting out, that was kind of the energy that it brought. And as it progressed, it was beginning to get more popular. So we started off with, I can't remember how much I said they charged, but
$1,000.
$1,000. Okay, in 1979, they're charging about $1,500, and we're getting 200 campers a year. So it's starting to make a steady incline. And at this point, David becomes the camp director. By the end of the 1980s, the obesity rate had doubled for children. So it was 10% at that time, and that's when we start to see the low fat, Jane Fonda, Slim Fast. Okay.
Slim Fast, Adkins, all
And
that stuff.
the article mentions that this is when we start to get, we're inching on 1990s, so some celebrity clients at the camp.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, so some of them that were listed, because we went with the child of a celebrity.
Yes, my friend Mika. So Mika was a friend of mine. We were at camp, and her dad is Mike Tyson. And we actually, and we'll talk about this at a later date, but we reconnected years later at a school for fat children, and it was a boarding school, so that was really interesting as well.
And so some of the other famous parents that sent their children include Steven Tyler.
Shut up.
Not Liv Tyler, but his other daughter. Yeah, and then the model Iman also sent her kid to Camp Shane.
I had no idea.
And okay, tell me if you remember this, because this was an interesting point of the article that like tickled my brain.
Okay.
And like, I can't remember if I'm making it up in my brain. Do you remember the pig out room?
Yes.
Okay, tell me what you remember about the pig out room.
The pig out room, it had snacks in there.
Okay.
And I feel like if you were liked by the counselors, you would get access to it.
Yeah, and what was it originally for, do you recall? Like who?
It was for the counselors.
Okay, so yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not making it up. I remember.
Yeah.
Like, it's so hard.
It's so the counselors, so after the kids go to fucking bed or when the kids are off doing some shit, they can go eat whatever they want.
Yeah.
They had their own fucking snacks. And if you were a favorite of the counselors, you did get taken to get snacks. It was kind of like a favoritism situation. Wow, that just click unlock.
Let's see.
Wow.
From the article, it says the sense of scarcity that pervaded camp life would deepen whenever kids got a glimpse of the pig out room right off the main dining hall.
That's what I was going to say, was by the dining hall.
To save on wages, Selma had used an employment service to recruit counselors from Europe.
Okay.
Many of them arrived thin and unsuited to a starvation diet, so the camp set aside a private feast for them. When the door to the room swung open, hungry children could peek inside and see skinny counselors gorging on peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Campers who'd hit their target weights were sometimes allowed to eat there as a reward. The pig out room was like the first-class cabin on a plane. It was a really weird dynamic. The movie, as I read this, because I watched it not that long ago, they sell it from this like cute couple to Tony in the movie. And the cute old woman is supposed to be Selma. Mm-hmm. And then it's her son. Now, they didn't do that dynamic of like mother and son, but
it was like a hostile take.
There was a transition of power that, like, as I get into this, is hostile. And then, yeah, like they were hiring European. But it's a lot more complicated than that because Selma really laid the foundation.
Yeah.
This was not...
She started the bad business practices and then he took over.
Yeah, I don't know who's the bad guy in this situation.
We're about to find out. Maybe.
But yeah, like, they talk about... so we would get unsalted popcorn or... and they would go to... do you remember Sick Hill?
Yes. I was telling Cody about Sick Hill. I will never forget what it just was like. It was off the infirmary. Mm-hmm. And I will admit, like, and haven't we all? Like, we all know that now, like, mental health is a reason for you to take a break. Mm-hmm. We're in that camp, we were under not only a lot of physical duress, but a lot of mental duress. And a lot of people needed a fucking break that was not given to us because that was against the rules. And so instead of being able to, like, rest and recoup in, like, your bunk or anything, or just, I don't even know, kind of rest and recoup, you were sent to Sick Hill. And it was usually kids with blankets just laying in the direct sunlight, baking like little hot potatoes. Mm-hmm. Just like, and people would be vomiting on Sick Hill. Yeah. Like in the grass, and then it would be cooking and you could smell it.
Well, like, so I'm a mental health professional, and one thing that I think was like the biggest, I mean, there's so many just issues with the way that this camp was run. And it gets down to just like even the structure of the cabins, you know, the living conditions, but like the kids that show up are usually their parents, the homes that they come from, lend to, you know, perhaps maybe why, like you and I gained weight kind of as a coping mechanism for a chaotic home life. You know, you eat to self-soothe. There's a lot of reasons why you might be experiencing weight gain.
Absolutely.
But a lot of stuff that we were going through was directly related to our mental health. Like it was a symptom. And there was nobody on site. So obviously we have these like European counselors. I don't really remember my counselors. But wait, I have a picture of the camp counselors. God, they're beautiful.
I know all of the counselors really just looked like people that would make you feel worse. Mm-hmm. And like, not to say that any of these people were bad people. Like, I don't remember my counselors for real. But I don't remember, and they're children as well, so they weren't particularly helpful. No, they don't know jack shit about themselves.
There was only one nurse, and so whether you
however many kids,
yeah, and by the time we got there, it was several hundred. You know, you're there having mental health crises, and
out the gate.
Yeah, and there's only one young woman there to help, and they did have there were, well, I think it was just camp counselors that would like measure you and weigh you.
Yeah.
So really there was nobody
The check-in
there.
process was really
Because I remember
intense.
there was like a small room off to the side that kind of looked like a clinic that we only went into once to get weighed and measured and take our
It
before
had a
pictures.
table, a scale, tripod, camera with a backdrop.
It felt very
It was
exploitative.
like
Yeah.
it felt like we were cattle being like measured, looked at, tagged, bagged, and sent out to pasture. It was awful.
Yeah, and they would take these before pictures, and if you didn't lose enough weight, they would just like, the before pictures were never seen again.
Right.
Or they didn't take after pictures if they looked at you and they were like, not good enough.
And a lot of these, I don't know if you recall this, and I know that the videos that I watched, all of the weigh-ins were private. I don't remember that. They were all public.
It's Camp Shane, they were private. Excuse me. And
Were
then
they?
Camp Pocono Trails was public.
Okay, because I remember public weigh-ins at one, non-public at the other. But in heavyweights, they were measuring like every inch of you.
No, I don't remember that.
Oh my God. I remember being measured around the neck. Not like to the extent that they did, because at one point they take like a clamp and they put it on this kid's jowl, which kind of made me chuckle because LOL. But then I do remember getting measured around the neck, around the ankles, around. I feel like they were anywhere they could shave an inch,
Yeah.
They were looking to do it.
Yeah. So that was in and of itself perhaps one of the more traumatizing parts of camp is the weigh-ins, and I think Pocono Trails was more traumatizing because it was public.
Absolutely.
But if you gained weight,
That was not good.
so there was a black market, like in the movie. They talked about this. I didn't see a whole lot of this in like my experience that I can recall, but they talked about selling a Snickers bar for $25. Having candy taped inside magazines that the mail was 100% checked.
Oh my
for
God,
contraband.
checked. And I don't know what the
You couldn't
letter.
even get bubble gum.
Yeah, no, nothing. If it had any caloric value, you could stick it in your mouth and chew it. They would toss
Thrown
it.
it away, yeah.
They would toss it, and like they would just go through your letters too to just make sure, like as they were going out, they wanted to make sure that like you weren't saying anything that like.
I remember a scandal with counselors going through kids' mail, and either like losing somebody's mail or there was something very personal that was divulged that got out. And I just remember it being, it was just a common practice that people would go
They
through
did not care about your
mail.
privacy. You had no privacy.
No. Okay, so, excuse me. Back to my timeline. So obviously we're in like the 80s. Things are getting more expensive. We're starting to enter into what was considered the obesity epidemic, and
Hair's
David.
bigger. People are bigger.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
David meets his wife Zipporah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he basically tells Selma that he wants control of the camp, and they agree.
Oh.
In 1990, no thank you, David sues his mom. So he's now the director of the camp, and he's starting to get a little power crazy. Sues his mom, or he's, just generally like, mom's not doing things ethically. I don't really know. But he sues his mom for misusing camp funds. And so,
spicy.
yeah, allegedly she mixed up about $100,000. Yeah.
Been there, done that.
Yeah. And people started to notice that, like, the grandchildren were having trouble with Selma. Like, she bought one of them a condo and then kicked him out. And it was just very dramatic. And she seemed to be kind of losing her wits about losing the camp. So she tries to evict David and Zipporah. That for some reason it reminds me of a zip line.
Zipporah.
And their child.
There weren't zip lines at the camp either.
No, I wouldn't have gotten on one anyway. I would now, maybe.
Let's find out on next episode.
Yeah, if you guys want to fund me going ziplining and see if I can do it.
I'll push her.
Anyhow, so Selma's like trying to evict David and Zipporah and the child.
Their child.
Yeah,
Okay.
her grandchild. And so
Dang.
it becomes a big game of he said, she said. Selma's like, he quit. And David's like, no, I didn't. So,
Who do we believe?
right, this is the thing, is that Selma then tries to like invalidate the contract, and David ends up just buying the camp out from underneath her. So remember, they bought the camp for $50,000,
Right.
and then he bought it from them for $1.2 million.
Dang.
Yeah, Selma's like, fine, I'll take the money, and then she's like, wait, I changed my mind.
It gets so now wait. Does she have a Gemini moon too?
I don't know. I should look up her zodiac sign. Selma's like, yeah, you can have it. Wait, no, I want it back. And then she tries to sue them, and she loses. And
Girl, cause she's nuts.
David becomes the owner, and Selma and her husband Irving move across the street.
How very Kanye.
Yeah. Irving, at his passing in 1994, so we're getting close to the time that you and I started to attend,
Okay.
says something's wrong with Selma, obviously.
So let me get this straight. So shit's rolling downhill and we're walking in and climbing up it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that makes sense.
So 1994, Irving passes. That's the husband, and the camp is starting to fall apart because I think like David was really, he's the new owner, and then there's like all this drama with his mom, and so the camp starts to fall apart. They reported like gaps between the floorboards where there were bugs crawling out.
I
water.
remember.
The gym was run down.
Ugh.
And when we arrived,
Well, this is why I have an aversion to camping. So somebody
100%.
fix it.
Oh my gosh.
Somebody fix it. I just light bulb.
Yes, that is why we are so like,
We don't like camping. I've never been on a float trip. Somebody got
okay.
We're gonna
so-
get fixed this summer. Don't worry.
Yeah, because I'd gone to camp. I'd gone to camp Deer Creek by myself. It was just a typical camp. I had so much fun. Mom said that I came back like stinkier than ever. I was like, but I had so much fun. I was not dressed appropriately. I remember I had these wedge sandals from Mud. Remember Mud, Mudd, or maybe it's Steve Madden?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I wore them on a hike and they broke. And then my counselor said to carry me back. But like normal camp, sign me up. Then we go to Camp Shane, and when we get there, and here, will you hand me that picture in the front?
Absolutely.
Okay, so this was my cabin, and we got infested with earwigs.
Oh my God, I
Like,
remember the
immediately.
earwigs. Oh my God. You had to turn over the hockey sticks
Yeah.
on the field.
I can feel it in my ear holes.
And they would all just go
Yeah.
like and everybody would tell you that they eat your brains, do they?
I don't know. Look it up.
Yo, we have a lot to look up. I've looked up 3 things and haven't finished it.
And then there was a lice outbreak. And so we had to take everything that we owned and put it into trash bags and send it off. And then there
Was this a year that, because you only went here 1 year,
just
right?
1 year.
Okay, this was all happening like a couple bunks down and I didn't even know?
You didn't know.
I had no idea.
Of course, they put the anxious girl in the crazy falling apart bunk.
Oh my God, earwigs, what did they do?
Find out immediately. Because this has been like a constant fear that is woven into my everyday life. No, I'm not really that fearful of earwigs, but like,
Earwigs usually spend their days hiding while feeding on leaves, flowers, fruits, mold,
That
and
sounds
insects
lovely.
at night. I'm like, I would like to be an earwig. During the day, most earwig species tend to seek out cold, wet areas that are left undisturbed, such as
Right.
small, moist crevices. But do they...
eat your brains.
Are they? They are not dangerous. So they lied.
Okay, so it really wasn't that big of a deal that it was infested with earwigs,
But
we
also,
were led
like-
to believe that like we were about to die.
Just another thing to add to the list of
There was
lies.
enough going on at that camp that was bad. So, but the earwigs were also there.
Still so gross.
We were cohabitating with the earwigs. They were crawling outside of my toothbrush container, and
All the phone booths were infested with wasps' nests. Do you remember that? Wasps' nests.
wasps' nest.
But you would, so back in the day, kids, you would use a phone card and you would type the numbers into a payphone that was on the wall. And that's how you would make a phone call without a cell phone. And on camp, you would get time to make phone calls every once in a while. And they had these little shacks. And it just felt like a punishment to go in there. And they kind of reminded me of the Chokey from Matilda.
Yep.
But above it was all nests of like hornets and wasps and shit like that. And so you'd be on the phone sweating your fat dick off in a hot box, and you're just crying into the phone, and all you can hear is, "This call is about to end in 2 minutes."
Oh, yeah.
And you're screaming into it.
You felt like a captive
I
because it's like you try to reach home, which is also, in our case, not particularly somewhere that we were
far away. There's a
thrilled
time
about.
right, yeah, almost.
But, well, there were parts of it. You
Yeah.
know, there were safe parts of our home, but like, regardless, I would have gone straight back to whichever hell I came from to get out of this one.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, you'd be like in there trying to contact ET phone home.
And nobody would be.
It was like very,
very
very
toxic.
overwhelming sensory experience, I will say that.
Yes. Oh.
So that's in 1994, and then we've got about 400 kids at the camp at this point in 1995. Like, by the time we got there, I don't even know how many kids. 500.
Okay. Dang. That's a
The
lot
year
of
that we
kids.
were there is when MTV showed up.
I know.
Do you?
I remember. Mm-hmm.
You know what? It's coming back to me. I remember. I thought that was at Camp Pocono Trails.
So the show that I watched a little bit of took place. That's why I was so confused. The media. It's very interesting. Shane, there's not a lot of digital media that says anything but like good stuff
About Camp Shane.
about Camp Shane.
Well, at the end of this article, he's still, and like he just closed it in 2019. He's still battling a lot of
That's
legal
insane.
stuff. So I'd be
Because
curious
like
if he's
not
right.
there's not a lot of things that like give me any real insight into what it was like. There's lots of promotional videos, and that's really all you get.
Because they did
Yeah.
an MTV True Life. True Life, I'm going to fat camp.
Yep.
And I looked high and low for that episode.
You can't find it.
Nowhere.
You can't find it's like lost media, but they were there. They filmed like with our group a few times. And I think they were focusing on the older kids, so like 15, 16. But like, yeah, I remember. It was a big deal.
Yeah. So at this point, Selma is sitting across the street losing her mind.
Well, yeah,
Losing
because
it.
her
She
son's
set
getting
her house on fire.
She set her house on fire.
Set her house on fire and blamed it on them.
I applaud. Oh, sorry, I got close. I applaud
The
her.
creativity.
Yeah, like her theater.
She also, during Parents Week,
drama.
I'd be curious if Mom got a ticket because it's this. No, wait. This is 1995. Never mind. She starts calling like the cops on parents that are coming to visit their kids to give them tickets. And what else did she do? She called the IRS. She also posed as parents and called the health department and was like, save these kids. They're in grave danger.
Honestly, bitch, I wish
I know.
they would have.
I know. She kind of really was like trying to help us.
She started the drama, and then she was like, "Am I the drama?"
Right.
And then she was like, "Let me save you."
Yeah, but only
But
because,
it was for her.
Yeah.
Narcissist.
So in 2000, David is making close to $1 million profiting off of fat kids. He himself has never been
want my
fat.
money back.
Yeah, almost $1 million. The IRS visits, and he does get in trouble.
Thank God.
So 2002, we get MTV True Life enrollments up to 500 campers. At this point, it's costing families $6,400
So it went from
for 9 weeks, but we went for 4 weeks.
right. So I like watched in some of these videos that the programs usually were like anywhere between like 4 to 9 weeks.
Yeah, we went for 4 weeks. So it was a
Thank
couple of
God.
grand for each of us to go.
Can you imagine being there 3 times as long? Like, can you imagine?
No.
And we got picked up early from some of these, or at least from Pocono one year.
Well, yeah, that was,
We'll go back to that.
yeah. There were reasons.
Listen, I didn't do shit.
So in 2002, yeah, he's netting $2 million a year. That's just like the net income for the camp, not
Okay.
necessarily what he is pocketing.
Right.
And Selma moves to Florida. So I'm just going
Yeah,
to
I
give...
saw she died in Boca Raton.
Yeah, so what happens is kind of scandalous. So she moves to Florida, immediately kills somebody in her car on accident. But, like, we're starting off hot, okay? She moves there with her accountants, can't remember what Corey Levine and Mark Tanner.
So she just is like, yo, bitches, get in the car,
out.
let's go murder.
Well, they were like, we want to keep an eye on you because she was
Shit's
struggling.
bad when your accountants are like, we're going to come with you to Florida.
So they go to
From New York.
Florida with her. She kills her friend in the car. Oopsies. They take away our keys. She's like losing her marbles at this point. 2004, David's back in New York running the camp, and he pleads guilty to tax evasion, and he ended up with 4 years probation, 400 hours community service, and $60,000 in restitution. And he also had to give out scholarships because the judge deemed him as doing like a great public service. So he was originally going to be sentenced to several years in prison, but then he was given a big old break because it's good for the community.
Less fatties, more baddies. Am I right?
That's what the judge was thinking.
Jesus Christ.
They also lost their accreditation at this point due to poor reviews and negative inspection results. So 2 years after we went, they lost their accreditation because of poor inspections.
It makes sense, brother. We could see the dirt through the floor in the cabin.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it was awful.
Oh, yeah. And the article references the troubled teen industry was thriving. So one of the camp counselors reports in 2011, she shows up and she has to scrub tables, sweep floors, haul out year-old garbage. Toilets were clogged, showers lacked curtains. On move-in day, it rained and water leaked through the roofs.
Yeah.
Within the span of a few hours one day, she had a crying girl admit that she'd cut herself, found another purging in the bathroom, consoled a sobbing camper who's only lost 10 pounds that week. And she says that if you didn't show up with an eating disorder, you left with one.
Or multiple. You just picked them up and then put them in your bag and walked out.
100%. Like, I know that you and I were probably both binging when we arrived there, but we'd also had, like, a lot going on at home. You know, details we can get into or not. But
we had a very, very active home life, which took a lot of our emotional attention.
And was very, like, centered around food.
Correct. And punishments that went along with your size and how much you ate.
And you know, in the work that I do, it's very clear that in environments that create a sense of scarcity around food, then you compensate by over-consuming so that you know, it's a matter of safety. Like, as children, I think one of the things that a lot of adults don't fully understand is that the motivation of a child is simply to survive.
Absolutely. Nothing else.
You know, and even if they are in fact being manipulative, they're doing that to get their needs met. And I don't even like that word manipulative, but, you know.
Well, if something's going to get you, if you do something and gets you in a response, and that's what you're going to do to get that response. You know, kids aren't great communicators.
100%.
I think that's the thing, right? Because we don't know jack shit. So they are taking all these little ding-dongs and then tossing them into prison and then laughing about it and then pushing us out malnourished and, like, brain scrambled 4 to 9 weeks later, you know?
Yeah.
Somebody cooked us on the blacktop.
We were shamed, blamed, you know, worked out to the point of vomiting. We were force-fed. That happened at Camp Pocono Trails. At Camp Shane, they did not care if we didn't eat.
No, and they put that's why the food was at the bottom of the hill. People would skip eating because there were people, and there were people who were far that had more difficulty mobility-wise than we did. And it would just be so sad because I saw people who would try to, like, sneak the food, sneak helpings up to help a bitch out in the cabin.
Right.
But we would get searched. You would get searched as you left the dining hall if you couldn't carry anything out with you.
And what's heartbreaking to me is that they often talked about, like, how parents would be so eager to get home a quote unquote new child, and, like,
yes,
there was. I mean, I remember just being kind of like, even by our well-intentioned parent. Really celebrated for, you know,
looking so different
and, like, it being very, it was just, and then the dynamic was, you know, you get to celebrate with a big meal when you get home. Like, the dynamics have become so,
There's a big meal before you go.
yeah,
It's like they're sending
the
you
Last Supper.
the Last Supper, where before Judas stabs you in the back. Which, funny enough, we're taping this on Easter, so
What's up,
happy
Jesus?
Zombie Jesus.
Zombie Jesus.
Happy Zombie Jesus Day.
Anyhow.
Anyway.
But yeah, no, it was very much, it created, and they talked about this in the article too, is that people would lose all this weight in this isolated kind of bubble, and then they would gain it back in the real world. And
Twofold
then,
sometimes.
yeah, extra. Because once again, it creates, if you didn't already, some people that went to camp didn't have these traumatic home lives. They were simply just a different size body. Okay, so I want you to read this quote right there.
This top one.
Yeah.
The number of kids with significant mental health issues had also started to increase, several former employees say. Franklin, an assistant head counselor in 2014 and a longtime camper in the 1980s, remembers the girls stealing plastic knives from the dining room to cut their thighs.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, dude, I wanted to kill myself the whole time I was there. But okay, well, anyway. We're getting raw and real.
Yeah, we don't need to disclose, like, I mean, if you feel so inclined. Anyway.
I did.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was...
I mean, it was a prison. It really, truly was. No, and you know what? But it's funny because some kids, and I don't know... I don't know. I can't say because I don't know where they are. I don't know what they're doing. But some kids seem to like thrive.
100%.
And I don't understand why. No soul, something like that. It's got to be.
Well, I think, to like, there were a lot of elements of isolation in our home life that we were kind of subject to, and just a very complex. It's quite literally complex trauma, which means that it's ongoing. You're constantly being exposed to the same traumatic event repeatedly. And so you and I had like delayed social skills, and you were hyper aggressive, and I was really hyper anxious around people. And so for me, it was hard to make friends. For you, it was hard to make friends because you were trying to kill them. And there were folks that just simply, like I said, had different bodies that were attending this camp that were really excited to be in an environment where they felt like a part of something. But for us, everything in the camp that was falling apart, that was dilapidated, that was far too intense, the calisthenics, the walking up the hill, the heat,
It was hot.
food deprivation, it really just increased what was already like our baseline, which was dysregulation. And it was terrible. It was just awful. And we were a part of that group of kids that were getting so dysregulated that but like people didn't know what to do, or just kind of
they were like,
we
you guys were insane. They're like, you guys are clearly like, chill the fuck out.
Right, like we're
all the time.
Yeah, we didn't need to be there.
No.
It was very much environmental, and like taking us out of that environment and putting us into a different environment just exacerbated.
It was like, okay, we've got this crazy that's very unpredictable at home.
Yeah.
And then what's the solution? Take them into another crazy place where it's also unpredictable, but then also strip away anything that brings them comfort.
Yeah.
And I think that's really what it is.
Yeah, I mean, we just...
It wasn't it.
Okay, but so, like, while we were rocking back and forth, Selma was in Florida.
Rocking
and back and forth. This is gonna just, like, buckle up.
Okay.
Okay. Buckled up. So, she's living there with Tanner and Levine, which were her accountants. She stops eating. She's about 88 years old. She writes in her will, "For reasons known to me and the members of my family, I have not made any provision herein for the benefit of my children." She left $1 million to a Jewish charity owned by her friend that she killed. And then the rest of her $7.6 million she put into the Selma and Irving Edinburgh Foundation that had 2 executive directors, her accountants.
I could just...
Okay, so those 2 accountants And at this point, the camp is like dwindling, and David doesn't know that his mom has died. Um,
Oh,
and
sorry, I knocked that. Okay. Well, sorry. Yeah.
some of the other kind of more egregious issues that showed up in the later years include oh, this one just like is really gross. I don't even know if I want to say it. Okay, yeah, you can read it.
Where is it?
Uh,
Okay. Staff there assured the parents of a 15-year-old autistic boy who was anxious about attending sleepaway camp that counselor would be in his dorm pod at night. No counselor was in the dorm, and a camper with known behavioral issues who outweighed the autistic boy by, 100 pounds, raped the boy. It took months for the victim to be able to verbalize the assaults. After he did, the bigger boy pleaded guilty to one felony count of second-degree cruelty to children. David and Camp Shane are contesting the suit. He says he wasn't present in Georgia and wasn't told anything at the time. First of all, Logan Roy says he doesn't do anything all the time in succession, but guess what? He did.
and then he ends up selling the New York property for $6.3 million. And he moved to Georgia, which is where he ended up having a lot of those issues.
Isn't that where the new camp is? Isn't there a new camp?
Yeah, well, it's closed now because somebody
thank
like
God.
fractured her skull, and then it was a whole thing. Okay, so Tanner and Levine, obviously, they created a wedge between, or they capitalized on the wedge that was, shoved between David and his mom.
Why is this like giving me? Go ahead. I just.
I know. Are you feeling personally attacked right
Yeah,
now?
actually.
Okay, so Tanner and Levine, they dole out some money, about $750,000 to charities. But what's happening with the other million?
Yeah, where at,
So
though?
the journalist who wrote this article went down to Florida to meet with them, and one of them shows up in like a Tommy Bahama shirt and like the next step up from a Rolex, a very expensive.
A Breitling or something?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
look at me.
I
love a watch.
And the guy's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I don't know where this money went. He goes, the $4.7 million that the foundation held, he says he doesn't know where it went. But
Me either, man.
let's see.
Like, how much money? 7 million?
Oh yeah, there was like
Who loses that much money? Somebody who knows where it is, didn't lose it, and is lying.
well, hold on. Okay, so David or not, Levine and what was the other guy's name?
I don't know, Laverne and Shirley. What did they do?
Yeah, Laverne and Shirley. We're gonna call them Laverne and Shirley. Okay, Laverne and
Yeah.
Shirley, the accountants. They are also being sued. So they're showing up to this thing and they're like, I don't know where the money is.
I don't know where it is. What do you mean?
And so that month that he goes down to visit him, the journalist also finds out that they're being sued by the family of a woman who died in 2018. Now, this woman had no children.
Okay.
Okay. So the alleged
Interesting.
offense is that the woman, Elsie, suffered a bad fall in May 2016, and Levine, who had power of attorney for her, cut her off from communicating from her family shortly before her death, and then had $12 million of her fortune transferred to a foundation that he'd created in her name. Very similar to what happened with Selma, because there's the Selma and Irving Foundation. And so this man, Laverne and Shirley, these men,
They
are like
did to her.
swindling, allegedly, we don't know, allegedly taking advantage of these like old ladies. And so now the foundation.
And we were just doing laps around the blacktop, and
No.
this was all happening.
And so he claims, once again, that he doesn't know anything about that.
Of course he doesn't.
And so the journalist, who I thought was pretty cool, was just like sliding documents across the table, like, okay, well then explain these tax documents. And like the guy was like, I don't know.
Why not?
Yeah, and so now they it was in 2019 that Camp Shane abruptly closed. They tried to operate right around the years of COVID. Obviously, COVID shut them down for one summer, but
Thank you, COVID, for something.
yeah, they said that one of the last offenses was that there was an 8-year-old girl who was hospitalized after fracturing her skull, and then he immediately closed the camp. And it has not been opened since.
And it should never be opened again.
Yeah, and there's several lawsuits going on for various crimes that were committed at the camp. Sexual assaults between campers, or, from camp counselors to campers. Safety issues, safety violations, obviously money laundering, and all sorts of things. And we were just starving. That was really my main concern.
Yeah, dude, I just wanted a ding dong or like something.
Anything.
Anything.
I would have taken a smoothie.
I would have taken a pita with a little. Mom loved a pita with a little hummus in it. I would have taken a snack.
Yeah, but we got like weird diet food.
Yeah, like I don't even honestly recall.
The only thing I remember from Camp Shane was the pierogies. They were mashed potato stuffed noodles.
Those were fire.
They were good.
Pierogi night was fire.
Yeah, and that was the only night I ate, and that's why I lost so much weight, because the rest of it I would not touch.
Oh, yeah.
So I would lose a lot of weight because I wouldn't eat at all. And then I would get force fed. And I only got force fed at Camp Pocono Trails.
Which I have never had a problem eating, so I didn't have that experience, so that's going to be interesting to hear about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so Camp Shane, Camp Pocono Trails is up next. Tell me what you learned about, because you watched the MTV documentary.
I did. I did not watch the whole thing. It is long. And you get the gist.
Do you see my eyes shooting daggers at you?
I do. Before we turned on the camera, we got into a little tiff.
No.
She's lying. All right. So I yelled. So I watched, the first thing I watched was a YouTube video. It was about an hour long, and it's recent, so it's from like 2022 or 2021. 2022.
Yeah, because Camp Pocono Trails is still going strong.
It's still going strong. And you know who looks exactly like he used to look is Tony freaking Sparber.
Yeah.
Tony Sparber is the Camp Pocono version of David Ettenberg.
Yeah.
The only way I can describe him, and you can look him up, but he's very New York. My name is Tony Sparber. This is Pocono Trails. That's how he talked.
I look it up, but I don't know where I found it.
Listen, I have a phone. Here's the internet. Tony Sparber.
Earwigs, what do they do?
Nothing, apparently.
I know.
So this kind of like followed a couple kids.
Oh my God, I remember him. Okay, now he used to be
He always
fat.
had the sun. I know, he was a chubby dude, and he was way too involved in the campers' lives. You could definitely tell that Tony wants to be Mr. Celebrity. He had the MTV show Back to Fat Camp, which centered around the counselors, which I'm not, you know what? I'm just going to be real. It was mind-numbing to watch.
Really?
It was like watching The Simple Life, but like with fat people.
Yeah.
And like, but it wasn't even, I'll explain.
Okay.
So the first thing I watched was this Journey to Fat Camp thing on YouTube that you sent me. They start off all these things with the kids, they do the spin, and they're like, my name is Michael. And then they're like, and, they show, they put you on like a cake stand, it looks like, and then they spin your fat ass around and they show you from every angle. And then they're like, okay, they show you the parents. The parents are like, it's been so hard because none of the girls like him and none of the boys like her, and I want her to have, it's very much like, I want my kid to have this normal life. They're not good enough. So this is where we're going to send, like, this is what's going to fix them, right? I do, like, and this is like 2022, so you can definitely tell that like some of the parents are like a little bit more Well-read and progressive. However, fat phobia still seems to be very, like, what it used to be.
Sure.
So all the kids, before they go, the parents take them to their favorite restaurants and they just get whatever they want to eat. And like I remember just doing that before every kind of diet, every
Yeah.
kind of situation that we were put in is like we got to fucking gorge, which you know, we were punished with food, we were rewarded with food, and we were motivated by food. I mean, it was just our entire existence.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that super interesting because I'm just like, okay, so right from the jump, we're telling you we're going to send you to a place that you're not going to enjoy. So let's give you like one little last bit of joy before we send you away.
Mm-hmm.
And so though these kids, they mention that the goal is for these kids to lose like 30% of their weight, which I feel like is a high number.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know, especially just for children, there's a lot of, I noticed that there's just a lot of talk about weight, your looks, how, I can tell these kids have a lot of
Body dysmorphia.
body dysmorphia, man. Like there's one kid who was trying out for he was in middle school, he was going to high school, and his reason for going to Camp Pocono Trails was that he wanted to get into the weight class where he could go do like wrestling or football or something. And he made it so close at the end. He was so close, and that kid was so disappointed. I think it was by like 5 pounds, and all he could do instead of celebrate like the fact that he had a good summer, because during the video he seemed to thrive in that environment, he was having a good time, but it was like diminished very, very quickly by the fact that he didn't meet his like his goal. And I'm like, this is a kid, you know. I think that kind of kids shouldn't have to be worried about that kind of stuff.
No, and I think that like really just feeds into the unhealthy obsession with body image as opposed to kind of what we would call in the field of work that I do, which is interoception. And we have perception, which is our 5 senses, but then interoception is how we sense what's happening inside of our body. So our fullness cues, our hunger cues, what feels comfortable if we're being sedentary for too long and our body is like aching. That's its way of saying, let's get up and move. And there's so many, it's kind of like driving a car that has check engine lights. You know, when we're focusing more on the number on the scale, the number on the measuring tape, we're not focusing on how the kids feel, and there becomes, you know, it's centered around shame.
Absolutely.
And for kids who didn't meet their weight loss goals, because a lot of times, you know, weight gain and weight loss is not as controllable as people think. You know, you can go into a calorie deficit or whatever and, you know, lose weight. But there's so many other factors. Cortisol levels, your stress really helps, you know, hold on to that. There's so many reasons why you might not be able to do this one-size-fits-all approach. And
it is so one-size-fits-all. Now, okay, so I have the cost of what the camp costs, which back in 2022 is $7,900 per person, and you are under constant surveillance the entire time. That's also something I forgot about Pocono Trails, is every inch of that camp is video surveillanced.
All I know is that, like, when I was reading about Camp Pocono Trails, or Camp Shane. No, I was reading about Camp Shane, that they've started introducing therapeutic intervention on campuses.
Too late. We've been burned by...
Well, I have my thoughts on, like, the style that they used anyway. It just falls in line with their, like, values, which is just very shame-based.
Absolutely.
But
I think that, like, a camp like this could be successful, like in Heavyweights, and it sounds so Disney, but, like, it could be successful. We could teach kids how to move their bodies, feel good inside, and do, but like all we do, it's easier to stick them in a pen together and let them figure it out and give them nothing.
100%.
It's cheaper too.
Yeah, I mean, it's very backwards.
Yeah, and I forgot about the constant surveillance, and it made sense, right? Because do you remember Tony, and you said golf carts earlier?
Mm-hmm.
Tony used to ride around in that like jeeped out golf cart all the time with his little sunglasses, and he would pop off at every group, and he was just always around. But I remember as a troublemaker
Always.
that I was always getting pulled into that. There's an office.
I remember that office.
Uh,
Oh my gosh, you just unlocked a memory because I would get pulled in just to be like looped in.
Yeah, the
Because I was
plywood
really,
wall office,
yeah.
the particle board office.
Yep.
I got pulled in there all the time, and I'd be like, how does he know what I'm doing? Because he knows everything. It is very creepy, the amount of surveillance that he has on these campers. It's also very creepy how much he's involved in the campers and the young counselors' lives.
Gross.
So, anyway, this program is now, like I said, almost $8,000 per person. I wrote in here, Tony Sparber. Fuck that guy. So the check-in process is pretty much similar as it used to be. You get in there, your stuff gets confiscated. While your stuff's being checked, you get a full lice check. You get your measurements taken, you get all kinds of things checked, and then they take your phone.
Mm-hmm.
So nowadays, they don't have the phone booths anymore. So the kids get their phones once a week for 15 minutes. That's it. If you can't reach home,
Oh wait, yeah, no, I was calling home constantly.
SOL. You are SOL. So there is a clip in this video where Tony is talking about how annoyed he gets by the influx of emails from parents saying that their children are in distress. He says that the kids are not in distress. He's telling the parents they get to call you once a week for 15 minutes. I see them all the time. They're having a nice day. Like they're having, they're getting along with people, and they talk to you, they get all whipped up out of shape, and they say that they hate it here when that's just not true. So what is
Oh my gosh,
happening?
that would happen to me.
Yes, and he's very charming, like, dude. He seems like he wants to be your best buddy, he wants to be your friend, but I have no love for that man. But he would tell then your parents that what you were feeling isn't what you're feeling, and it was just you were overcome by the 15-minute phone call that you got once a week. And I remember this from being a camper. If you misbehaved, you did not get your phone call.
Mm-hmm.
There would be plenty of weeks where I spoke to nobody because I know that I've always been aggressive, and when I was a child and dysregulated, my way of saying this is fucked up would be to like light things on fire. But like,
Well,
what have you.
behavior is communication.
Behavior, and kids don't know how to communicate. So
Well, I mean, if you think about like at the most primal level, like animals, if a cat is hissing at you,
man.
these are all
back up.
ways of communicating. And I mean, you had some serious issues at Camp Shane. Somebody cut your hair off.
That was Camp Pocono Trails.
That's what I meant.
Yeah. Yeah, we had a moment. Cody and we were watching. He was kind of like loosely watching, but remember, you have to go to the flagpole every morning.
Yep.
So every morning the music would come on, and somebody would be like, "Good morning, Camp Pocono Trails. We're meeting at the flagpole in 30 minutes," and like that was just kind of like the first thing you had to do, and you had to participate. Like they wouldn't let you not participate, and I remember. The girls in my cabin just were not. There's a hierarchy. I don't give a shit that everybody's fat there or.
Oh, 100%.
There are pretty fat people and there are ugly fat people and there are cool fat people and there are not cool fat people, and I was not
We
cute.
were not cool.
And
We
I
were
was-
not cute. I do think
we were the ugly weirdos.
I actually had a decent time, I think. At
The
least at
fact
the
that you
beginning.
can't remember it is. Are we sure?
I don't know. But I know that, like, I was disappointed when we got kicked out.
Oh, yeah. For this. Yeah, this is
Yeah.
what happened.
And, but then when I went back 2 other times,
Mhm.
I was miserable. I was climbing the walls. I made no friends. So I do believe I made friends the first year.
Yeah.
It was a little bit more of a warm environment there,
Mhm.
at least from my perspective, which I
Mhm.
think you made more friends at Camp Shane.
Yeah, I had more friends at Camp Shane, which was really interesting.
It was just like whatever batch of like
whichever
traumatized children you got, and just,
it is like
your
jail.
trauma vibe with their trauma.
Who are you getting put with? Because you got to think of personalities between people. Like, you're not going to get along with everybody.
Right.
And we are trapped. We are starved. We are overworked. We are dysregulated. And now you're being put in a bunk with who knows who.
Right.
All these personalities come together. They don't make a very fun mix.
Yeah, and so in your cabin...
In my cabin, I had lots of trauma. I don't remember a lot, but I remember I took a nap, and I had long hair when I got to camp, and I took a nap, and I woke up, and there was a different story happening because my ponytail was next to me on the bed, and I remember I freaked out, and I was sobbing, and they were trying to get in touch with Tony so he could call mom. But like, this was so we had like, they had like cell phones that the counselors would get to have. So they were trying to call, but it's early in the morning. So I had to go to the flagpole.
And I remember walking up and lining up, and like, I would always look for you. And
I remember what hoodie I was wearing too.
You looked...
I was
wrecked.
going to... Ooh!
Emily, you looked like you crawled right out of the Hot Topic.
I was wearing a red hoodie with like black, like flames
you were just
on
like
it.
scowling, and your hood was up, and they made you take it down because of the
They ripped it down.
American flag.
Yep, because of the freaking American flag. And so everybody looks at me, and I look like a prepubescent teenage boy, which I look back on it, and I was like, what a look. But like, it was not...
It was not a look.
My hair went from here to about here. And that was what brought my mom back to pick us up. Because at this, I don't know, I just been bullied to the point of like, physical change had been made.
Well, yeah, and I think that, I can't remember, were you really reactive? Like, what
No.
you don't remember?
I
Because I was under the impression that we got kicked out because of the way that you behaved.
It was because I decided that I was no longer going to participate in any camp activities in a place that didn't treat me like a human being.
Fair.
A lot of my, like, issues at these camps came from a lack of understanding why I was in this program to fucking begin with, what this was doing for anybody. I was just, like, the kind of kid who, like, didn't like to rock the boat a lot. And I was really just like, somebody fucking tell me what's going on. And no answer was good enough because what we were put through in these camps was not necessary. No. Not necessary, not normal, and not good for you. And I was just written off as an asshole because they couldn't force me to do anything. I just would stand there. Because what was I going to do? If I was going to do anything, I wanted to break down in tears and get away and get some space and, like, I don't know, have some kind of regulation, but you were watched constantly. Well, people would stand outside the bathroom to make sure you weren't going to do anything to yourself.
In my journal, I wrote that because I went back the next year without you, and so I said they told me I had to eat because I was so upset and so dysregulated from just like the travel of getting there and just being there by myself, that I just didn't have an appetite, which is like a normal human response. And they were forcing me to eat, and then allegedly, I don't remember this, but I said I heard the camp counselor saying that they were going to have a problem with me. And from that moment on, this was my first day, I cried every day. Like a little, tiny little baby. I was just so upset. I hated everything. I mean, literally every page is, I hate it here, I hate it here, I hate it here.
And I knew a few kids who enjoyed it. However, it seemed like a lot of kids really struggled with this place.
Yeah, I just kept counting down the days till I would get to go home and play Sims.
Yeah.
I literally like wrote out all of that. And there was like...
It was 100. So in this video too, they said in the shade it's 100 degrees and the campers feel like they're worked too hard. So they actually got some of the campers to like talk to the camera people. They didn't like show their face when they were talking, but they were saying, they said, how do you feel about the level of activity? Because you go from sedentary to 20 hours a week. And they said, well, it's 100 degrees in the shade and the campers feel like they're worked too hard. They can't sit. They have to walk in the sun or do activities. There's no sitting. You get 5 meals and 2 snacks a day. Each meal is 700 calories, jello or ice cream for dessert, and portion control and regular feeding times. This is how they say that they feed you. But I'm going to be real with you. I don't remember being fed enough.
I remember Rice Krispie treats.
I do remember that, but those were very, like, few and far between.
Oh, 100%.
Which is obviously, like, you know, everything in moderation. But, yeah, I think it's interesting when you don't... It's hard to learn how to regulate when those skills aren't given to you. They're just choices that are made for you.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And so, like, I still struggle and don't understand how to, like, feel good in my body. Like, it fluctuates, and I don't get it sometimes.
Well, because that is just not... I mean, if you remember, at the same time that we were going to this camp, the show... what was it called? Biggest Loser.
Oh my God, that was a huge deal.
Yeah, I mean, Mom
was
considered
obsessed.
that you guys would go to the Biggest Loser camp, which was just the same thing.
Could you imagine?
And who was the leads in that show?
Jillian Michaels.
Thank you.
Who's a cuckoo.
Making people work out until they throw up.
That is not good for you.
Yeah.
I've learned that in adulthood. That's not good for you. When you feel like you're gonna you stop. Take a beat, walk slow, chill out.
I mean, it just, like I said, there is an entire, I know, I'm just reading.
There's a kid that said, if I feel like if I had a better body, I'd be more confident. Mm-hmm. Which is like, that's shitty to teach kids. And that's what they teach kids is like, if you look good, everybody says look good, feel good. Sometimes I looked great and I felt like shit. It's really just about how you feel on the inside. There's a kid that was hoping to get a 6-pack by the end of camp, which I just thought was like, I was like, these is just a poor little round kid. I said, what water activities? They had none. There was a particularly interesting mother-daughter combination this year at the camp. As Tony was making fun of the kids that wanted to go home, there was a first-timer at the camp, and she has like a thyroid problem, and her mom is actually the nurse at the camp. Mm-hmm. So she's getting into her cabin. She's trying to talk to the girls, and nobody's talking to her. They have iced her out because she's not the cool, not the cool kid, mm-hmm. right? She then spends some time with her mom. Tony, every time he sees her near like the infirmary, like he caught her and was like, you two need to stop spending time together. Like, she needs to go out there and be with the other kids.
Attachment-based therapist. This is gonna make me irate.
Oh, I know. I knew it would.
She should be near her mom.
And the mom and the daughter were standing on the stairs next to each other. The mom looked like she didn't know what to do because obviously there's a power dynamic here. Tony's her boss, mm-hmm. right? And her daughter is in this camp, but she has signed her daughter over to the program, and so. He says to the daughter, he says, you go spend time with the kids. And he goes, look at you. You're skinnier already. It's, like, why? And this poor mom is just standing there, and they're on camera. What is she going to do? Mm. Like, so the parents can come visit, but they must be searched every time they come visit. Mm-hmm. So, like, if mama comes and she got some... I love a ding-dong. I've brought it up 3 times. If you got a ding-dong in her bag, you ain't getting it. No.
No, you won't.
No, you won't. Kids can leave with parents during parent visits.
I think we did go.
We did a one parent visit, I think, where we got to go to a restaurant. You can make your own choices.
And and that was like when we would choose to eat everything inside.
Yep. Kids have talked about suicide in that and have run away. Mm-hmm. They did random bunk inspections 3 times a week, which was very reminiscent of Heavyweights, mm-hmm. where they would come in and they would break apart the furniture. Because, like, people would... I didn't see anything as extreme as, like, remember when they tied the candy bars to the British boy, and then they lifted his shirt, mm-hmm. and he was, like, covered in chocolate, and they all pushed him on the bed and started eating it?
Yeah.
Like... It wasn't like that, but like people were definitely trying to like wrap snacks in their dirty drawers for
Yeah.
sure.
It was desperation.
And then Tony's like every time camp begins, he does this. Remember, he would do like the meeting. You'd go, you put your stuff in your bunk, you get to know everybody, you get your measurements done, your weight done, all the humiliating check-in bullshit. And then he would have that nightly meeting where he'd be like, we're going to have the best summer of your lives. And so he was like, they'll get the wow factor when they get home. He was like, this is what the kids come for, is they get the wow factor when they get home. So he's basically saying, they shipped you here because you're not good enough, but when we send you back, you'll be great.
Yeah, 100%. Like they would,
It's fucked.
it was very much like about the reveal. And I read this, I was like looking for academic articles that would support our experience because I, like you said, was shocked to see that like a lot of the information on the internet is kind of supportive of these types of camps. And they
It's
were
hard to
talking
find any
about
bad press, which, buckle up, here we come.
yeah, the psychosocial impacts, so psychological and social impacts of these camps were deemed to be by this like one academic article that I could find because I don't have access to like, what I used to have in college, but just through like Google Scholar, was saying that there were positive psychosocial impacts on children because they would be more willing to participate in activities when they got home. They were more willing to engage with their peers, but they only followed up with them for a very short period of time.
Oh, yeah.
After
When the high is still high.
their camps. And so I was really, I mean, I'm not going to lie on this podcast or whatever we're doing and say that, like the research doesn't exist. There is research that like contradicts what we're saying.
Absolutely,
But
absolutely.
I think there's a
lot of
reason
it.
for that. Yeah.
Yes,
And it makes
because
a lot
they
of
want to
money.
look good. They make a lot of money. It looks good. It's like I said, it's easy to make money off of. I feel like it's easy to make money off of a very large problem.
Yeah. Huh.
You know what I
I
mean?
can say that because we were there.
I wish I had more to say about the Pocono show. But I don't because it's truly it's like people were passing notes back and forth. This camper, the junior campers seem to be, or junior counselors seem to be like campers that are just a little bit older with more privileges, right? They like used to go to the camp, some of them. And that created a lot of a vacuum of people who like knew each other, had past relationships, like
It was clicky.
it was very, very cliquey. And which there's like this toxic environment for the junior counselors, which is then spilling into our toxic environment with the campers. And then there's a toxic hierarchical component going on with Tony and all the, people that they have working for them. So the fat shaming that went on between the counselors was unbelievable. So like
That's so bizarre to
one, they
me.
got in trouble for leaving the grounds to get smokes and snacks, and Tony had video surveillance showing that they left and was like intimidating one of the junior counselors. And like still, mind you, these are still kids. Like they're like 17, 18 maybe, but they're still children. So
And like Tony himself is still thick, right?
Tony's still thick, man.
So like what's the problem?
So girl talks about being medicated for her thyroid. Her meds were making her sick all the time. This is that girl that was being iced out by her bunkmates. My goodness. Okay.
I know. In my journal, I was just writing about how I was crying during aerobics, and like my whole bunk was yelling at me.
Yeah.
I wouldn't stop crying. I was like,
They're like,
I
get
just hated
over
it.
it. Oh, I know. And if you like, you couldn't. You can't show weakness at these places. Oh yeah, the 2006 Fat Camp doc is mostly about the drama and relationships with the counselors. I did get a kick out of I believe in fries and I believe in super size.
I vaguely.
Yeah.
Was that around when we were there?
Yeah, it's like a song about how we wish we could fucking eat because we were all starving to death. Then I watched a little like article that said Camp Shane. It was about Camp Shane, but it was like it was all positive shit on Camp Shane. I found no negatives, no video negatives anywhere.
Yeah, this article I ended up from Bloomberg ended up having to pay No, I think I got a subscription. It was my free article for the subscription, but it was the one article. There was one from the Associated Press too about their recent violations, safety violations, but it was very short. And their Instagram account is still active.
Camp
But
Pocono.
Camp Shane.
Camp Shane.
Yeah, and like Camp Pocono Trails is still active and running. Yes.
It definitely felt a little bit cozier. There were obviously still like structural issues. I don't think everything was perfect. But
No,
the
I wrote
water, they
about-
make the water look like seem more habitable.
Yeah. I mean, there was a lake.
There was a lake. You don't go in it though.
I went banana boating on it,
I never got to go banana boating.
and my banana boat flipped. It was very scary.
Yeah.
But they definitely had nicer facilities. They kept it up a lot better. But I did journal about how like the showers were filled with bugs.
Yes.
And
Oh my God.
they didn't have any hot water.
No.
And so I mean but like that kind of comes with the territory of camp. But I think when you're physically uncomfortable in your body and then you're uncomfortable with like the social dynamics because there's like cruelty happening from all sides.
My hair got chopped off, so yeah.
It's just not. And I mean, yeah, there were so many layers to this experience that even though we were in the beautiful Pocono Mountains, it was not fun.
It was hell. It was awful.
Yeah.
And I remember we were watching Heavyweights, and I think that the thing I really like wished, because like when in Heavyweights, when Tony comes and takes over the camp, it takes everybody by surprise by surprise. But I remember going to camp the first time at Pocono and like hearing kids talk about like how much they didn't want to be back there. And it just felt like a little like eerie. And they in the movie, Tony does this dance with the girls camp from like next door and like tries to humiliate the kids because he knows that like that's not gonna feel comfortable for them. That's how I felt at like almost every function.
Oh, like the
at-
co-ed dance that was, and with like the skinny, beautiful girls. And
Yes.
it was actually like such a cute little scene because
It
like
was
they,
cute 'cause
but I mean,
they got it together, but this was real life,
yeah,
no.
and
And it was just it was as bad as you would think it was for at least some of us, for sure.
yeah. And then, yeah, we have a lot of other situations that we could talk about. Like you transitioned from that into the troubled teen industry.
I did. There was a school, which we will end up talking about at some point, called, it used to be called Academy of the Sierras. It was in California. But when I enrolled, it was called Wellspring Academy, and it was a fat camp
Cool.
school. So
Yeah,
we
it's a
got
boarding
to stay
school.
there for a longer period of time.
You lived there, and
lived there.
I was back here in St. Louis for that.
Which that's a whole other
Yeah,
basket of snakes.
yeah. And so there was that. We went on a variety of different diets. You were on Jenny Craig. I did Weight Watchers. We did a ton of different diets, and yeah, we've got lots of areas that we can talk about if anybody's interested
Yes.
in hearing more.
This is our first podcast, so if you're going to tell us how we did, please be gentle.
Remember, we are traumatized.
And this is My Little Menty B, which we will have later. But I think this segment we've decided would be called the Fat Camp Diaries, under the My Little Menty B rainbow, which we will figure that out.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we have lots of things to do, and if you're interested in seeing a blind lean cuisine taste test, then
Oh yeah,
this
like
will be
a
the
diet
place to
food
be.
taste test, and
Yeah,
talks of just kind of lived experiences and all of that, and
yeah.
let us know.
Also entertainment. We're gonna knock your
Possibly.
socks off.
I don't know. Maybe.
Maybe.
Maybe. I like us.
I
Hate us.
no, I'm unsure.
Yeah. Well, that's that interoception I was telling you about. We don't know how we feel. Okay.
All right.
Well, how would we like to sign off?
Thanks for joining us on this little Menty Bee. We'll see you for the next one.
The end.
The end.
And cut.
Get out. Leave. leave.
Flip a table.
We're very busy.
We must go.
We must end this nightmare.
Ding ding.
We're done.